Imagine finding a 1964 Lincoln penny with no mint mark in an old jar, a drawer, or even your pocket change and realizing that the coin in your hand is not necessarily just an ordinary 1-cent piece. Most 1964 no mint mark Lincoln cents are common, but a small number of exceptionally preserved coins and recognized varieties can command surprisingly strong premiums. And there's one especially unusual 1964 specimen that can take this story from an ordinary penny to a truly extraordinary rarity. So before you spend a 1964 penny with no mint mark, take a closer look, because the details hidden in the date, the surface, and the reverse could make all the difference. The 1964 Lincoln penny was produced during a fascinating moment in American history. The United States was going through enormous social and economic changes. President John F. Kennedy had been assassinated only months earlier, the Civil Rights Act was being debated and then signed into law, and the country was deeply involved in the Cold War and the space race. At the same time, the United States Mint was dealing with a major coin shortage. Americans were holding on to coins, businesses were struggling to keep enough change available, and the government was producing enormous quantities of circulating coins. That situation helps explain why so many 1964 Lincoln cents were made. The Philadelphia Mint produced about 2.648 billion regular business strike Lincoln cents that year, and because this particular coin has no mint mark, Philadelphia is the first place you should think of when you see a normal 1964 Lincoln cent without a mint letter. There is something important to understand here. A missing mint mark on a 1964 Lincoln cent is not automatically an error. In 1964, Philadelphia cents were intentionally produced without a mint mark. So if you find a 1964 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, that absence is exactly what you should expect from a Philadelphia issue. The real question is whether anything else about the coin makes it unusual. The coin itself follows the familiar Lincoln Memorial design introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. On the front, you see Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln facing right. The word Liberty appears to the left of Lincoln, the date 1964 appears to the right, and the motto In God We Trust stretches across the top. Turn the coin over and you see Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design. Above the building is United States of America, below it is 1 cent, and across the upper area is the motto E Pluribus Unum. This reverse design remained on the cent for decades, making the 1964 penny part of the first generation of Lincoln Memorial cents. The metal is another important clue. A normal 1964 Lincoln cent is made of approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures about 19 millimeters across, and has a plain edge. That copper composition is one reason these cents can develop beautiful red, reddish-brown, or brown coloration depending on how they were stored and how much exposure they experienced over the decades. Now here's where your examination should begin. First, look directly at the date. You want to see 1964 clearly. Then move your eyes to the area underneath the date. On a Philadelphia 1964 cent, there should be no D and no S mint mark. That is normal. Do not confuse the absence of a mint mark with the famous 1922 no D Lincoln cent. Those are completely different situations. A 1964 Philadelphia cent was intentionally made without a mint mark. Next, examine the surfaces. A heavily circulated 1964 cent may have scratches, discoloration, flattened details, dark spots, and worn lettering. That is normal after decades of use. But a coin that still has strong original luster, sharp design details, and attractive natural color can be much more interesting to collectors. And this is where condition begins to matter. A circulated 1964 no mint mark Lincoln cent is generally not a rare coin. In heavily worn condition, it may be worth only a few cents above face value, and many examples are still traded primarily because collectors need them for sets. In good condition, where the major design details remain but considerable whereas visible, the value generally stays modest. Fine examples show more detail but still have obvious circulation wear. Very fine coins have stronger remaining detail, while extremely fine examples show only moderate wear on the highest points of Lincoln and the Memorial. When you reach about uncirculated, things become more interesting. An about uncirculated 1964 Philadelphia cent may show only slight friction on the highest areas while retaining much of its original appearance. But the really important dividing line is mint state. Mint state means the coin has not been circulated in the traditional sense. Instead of looking primarily at wear, collectors begin examining luster, strike quality, marks, spots, color, and overall preservation. And with copper coins, color can be extremely important. A brown coin is generally identified as bien. A coin retaining a mixture of original red and brown color can qualify as RB, or red-brown. A coin with strong original red coloration can qualify as RD, or red. Two coins with the same numerical grade can therefore have very different market values depending on their color designation and eye appeal. This is one reason you should never judge a 1964 penny simply by looking at the date and assuming every example is worth the same amount. There is also documented auction evidence showing just how dramatic the difference can become at the highest grades. A regular 1964 Philadelphia Lincoln cent in a very high certified grade has brought thousands of dollars at auction. One documented example graded MS-64 brown sold for $5,750 at Heritage Auctions in 2004. Another 1964 Lincoln cent in an exceptionally high MS-67 red grade has a recorded auction result of $7,931. But notice something important. Those prices do not mean an ordinary 1964 penny is worth thousands of dollars. They represent exceptional certified coins at extraordinary grades. The average circulated coin is nowhere near those levels. That distinction is critical if you are searching through a jar of pennies. For a normal circulated 1964 no-mint mark cent, realistic value is usually modest. Depending on condition, color, eye appeal, and local collector demand, you might encounter examples selling for only a few cents to perhaps a small premium. Attractive uncirculated examples can move into the dollar range, and superior certified mint state pieces can become substantially more valuable. But now we come to one of the most interesting parts of the 1964 story. Some 1964 Lincoln cents are known with a genuine double die reverse variety. One recognized example is the FS801 double die reverse. On a genuine double die, the doubling is part of the die itself. It was created during the manufacturing process and appears as genuine separation or notching in specific design elements. This is very different from the flat, shelf-like appearance of mechanical doubling. Mechanical doubling can happen when the die shifts or moves slightly during the striking process. It can make letters or numbers appear wider or doubled, but it does not have the same characteristics as a true doubled die. It is also usually far less valuable. The recognized 1964 double die reverse FS801 variety has appeared in documented auctions. For example, a certified MS-64 red-brown example sold for $117.50 at a Stack's Bowers auction in 2014. A certified MS-64 red example sold for $99 in a Great Collections auction in 2014. Another certified MS-64 red-brown example sold for $113.98 in 2013. So if your 1964 no-mint mark penny appears to have doubling, don't immediately assume you discovered a fortune. The exact location, shape, strength, and characteristics of the doubling matter. Use magnification, good lighting, and comparison images. Look closely at the lettering on the reverse rather than simply looking for anything that appears blurry. Genuine double die characteristics tend to show specific forms of separation, not just random distortion. And there is another 1964 no-mint mark coin that deserves special attention. The 1964 special mint set cents, commonly called SMS cents, are extraordinarily unusual. These coins have a distinctive special finish and were not ordinary circulation strikes. Their surfaces can look more satin-like, with unusually sharp details and a different appearance from normal business strikes. The surviving population is extremely small compared with the billions of regular 1964 cents. That makes an authentic 1964 SMS cent a completely different category of coin. And the auction history is remarkable. A 1964 SMS Lincoln cent graded SP67 red by PCGS sold for $19,200 at Heritage Auctions in January 2025. That is a legitimate example of how dramatically rarity can change the value of a 1964 no-mint mark Lincoln cent. But there is a major warning here. You cannot simply take an ordinary shiny 1964 penny and call it an SMS coin. Surface appearance alone is not enough. Authentication is essential because a coin that looks unusually smooth, shiny, or well-preserved can simply be an ordinary high-grade circulation strike. This is why serious collectors use professional authentication and grading when a coin appears to have exceptional characteristics. Now let's talk about errors. A genuine mint error happens during the manufacturing process. Examples can include an off-center strike, a clipped planchet, a major die break, a struck-through error, or other documented production mistakes. These errors can carry premiums when they are clearly genuine, dramatic, and collectible. Post-mint damage is something completely different. If someone scratches the surface, bends the coin, hits it with a tool, damages it in a machine, melts part of the edge, or deliberately alters the lettering, that happened after the coin left the mint. Collectors generally do not consider that a valuable mint error. This is especially important because old copper cents can develop all kinds of strange-looking marks. A scratch across Lincoln's face is damage. A dent on the edge is damage. A flattened letter caused by impact is damage. A strange discoloration caused by chemicals is not automatically an error. The safest rule is simple. If the unusual feature looks random, damaged, scraped, flattened, or artificially created, be skeptical. If it has a consistent raised or recessed characteristic that fits a known minting process, then it deserves closer study. And before you ever clean a potentially valuable 1964 penny, stop. Do not polish it. Do not scrub it. Do not use chemicals. Do not try to make the copper brighter. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and reduce collector value. Instead, handle the coin by its edges. Keep it in a proper inert holder or archival coin flip, and store it somewhere dry and stable. If you think your 1964 penny might be a valuable variety or exceptional error, take clear photographs under good lighting and compare it with authenticated examples. If the coin appears genuinely rare or unusually valuable, professional certification can be worthwhile. There is also one simple test that can help confirm whether your coin is physically consistent with a normal 1964 cent. Weigh it. A normal 1964 Lincoln cent should be around 3.11 grams. Small variations can occur because of wear, environmental damage, and manufacturing tolerances, so don't panic if your inexpensive digital scale shows a tiny difference. But a dramatically different weight should make you investigate further. Then check the diameter, the edge, the color, and the overall design. And remember that the absence of a mint mark is not the discovery. The combination of the correct 1964 date, Philadelphia characteristics, original surfaces, strong condition, recognized variety, or genuine mint error is what can create collector interest. Don't spend it immediately. Don't clean it. Don't sell it to the first person who tells you it's just an old penny. Put it aside and inspect it carefully. Look at the date. Look beneath the date. Examine Lincoln's portrait. Flip it over and study the lettering and memorial. Check the weight. Inspect the color. Look for signs of circulation. Then, if you see unusual doubling or another possible error, compare it with recognized examples before making any decision. A normal 1964 no-mint mark Lincoln cent may be common, but that does not make it boring. Think about where this little piece of copper has been. It was produced during an American coin shortage, during a period of enormous political and social change, and during a time when the United States was racing into the space age. It may have passed through cash registers, gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, and countless American pockets before eventually ending up in someone's collection or forgotten coin jar. And after more than 6 decades, a tiny number of these coins have survived in exceptional condition or with unusual characteristics that collectors still study today. That's the real lesson of the 1964 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. The date alone probably won't make you rich. The missing mint mark alone won't make you rich. But condition, color, recognized varieties, genuine errors, and extraordinary special strikes can completely change the story. If you have a 1972 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, do not spend it until you take a very close look at the front, because one particular version of this ordinary-looking copper cent has become one of the most famous double-die varieties of the entire Lincoln cent series. And the difference between an ordinary 1972 penny and a truly valuable one can come down to details that are hiding right in the date and lettering. The surprising part is that the absence of a mint mark is completely normal. This coin was made at the Philadelphia Mint, where Lincoln cents did not carry a P mint mark. So if you find 1972 with no mint mark, you are looking at a Philadelphia issue, not automatically a rare error. And that distinction is extremely important, because millions of ordinary examples exist, while a genuine 1972 double die can be worth hundreds, thousands, and in an exceptional certified example, more than $14,000. To understand why this penny attracts so much attention, we have to go back to 1972. The United States was living through one of the most dramatic periods of the 20th century. Richard Nixon was president, the Vietnam War was still dominating American politics, the Cold War remained a major concern, and the country was preparing for a presidential election. In February, Nixon traveled to China in a historic diplomatic opening, and later that year he signed major agreements with the Soviet Union connected to limiting strategic nuclear weapons. At the same time, the Watergate break-in occurred in Washington, creating a political scandal that would eventually shake the presidency. For ordinary Americans, the penny was still one of the basic workhorses of everyday commerce. A 1-cent coin could buy something, contribute to a purchase, or simply disappear into a pocket, a cash register, a drawer, or a jar. Nobody knew that some of those tiny copper coins were leaving the Philadelphia Mint with a remarkable characteristic that collectors would discover and study for decades. The 1972 Lincoln cent continued the memorial reverse design that had been introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln remained on the obverse, while Frank Gasparo's Lincoln memorial design appeared on the reverse. On the front you should see Liberty along the left side, In God We Trust across the top, and the date 1972 below Lincoln's portrait. On the back you should see United States of America around the upper edge, 1 cent in the center, E Pluribus Unum above the memorial, and the Lincoln Memorial Building itself. The edge is plain, not reeded. The 1972 Philadelphia Lincoln cent was made from the traditional bronze alloy used for Lincoln cents at that time, approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc. Its standard weight is about 3.11 grams and its diameter is 19 millimeters. Those numbers give you a useful first line of defense when examining a suspicious coin. A genuine normal 1972 Philadelphia cent should be close to that weight when measured on an accurate digital scale, although circulation, environmental damage, dirt, corrosion, and normal manufacturing tolerances can produce small differences. A major difference should make you stop and investigate rather than immediately assuming you have found a rare error. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 2.933 billion regular 1972 Lincoln cents. That enormous production figure tells you something important. The ordinary 1972 no mint mark penny is not rare simply because it has no mint mark. In fact, the lack of a mint mark is exactly what you should expect from a Philadelphia cent of this era. The United States Mint has historically used the absence of a mint mark to identify Philadelphia coins, and during the period when the 1972 cent was made, the Philadelphia cent did not carry a P. So when you turn over your coin and find no letter beneath the date, that alone is not the jackpot. But now comes the part that makes the 1972 no-mint mark Lincoln penny so interesting. Look at the date. Then look at Liberty. Then look carefully at I in God We Trust. You are not simply searching for something that looks blurry or doubled because of damage. You are looking for a very specific form of doubling that occurred during the creation of the die itself. The famous 1972 doubled die obverse, commonly identified as FS101, is one of the major varieties in the Lincoln Cent series. On a genuine example, the doubling is strong enough that you may be able to see it without magnification. The date shows clear separation and a southwest spread, and the letters of Liberty and the words I in God We Trust also display characteristic doubling. The important clue is that the doubling is part of the raised design itself. It is not simply a flattened scratch or a shelf-like secondary edge. This is where many people make a costly mistake. They find a 1972 penny with something that looks doubled, search online for the most expensive 1972 penny they can find, and immediately assume they have the same coin. But true doubled dies and machine doubling are completely different. A genuine doubled die is created when the hubbing process produces a working die with a duplicated design impression. The finished coin struck by that die can repeatedly show the same distinctive doubling. Machine doubling, sometimes called strike doubling, happens during the striking process when the die or coin moves slightly and can create a flat, shelf-like appearance. Machine doubling can look exciting under a magnifying glass, but it usually does not carry the same premium as a recognized doubled die. There is another problem you need to watch for, and that is post-mint damage. Scratches, dents, scraping, polishing, corrosion, chemical exposure, and attempts to alter the coin can create shapes that look like doubling. If the surface looks scraped, the secondary image is flat, or the metal appears pushed or damaged rather than naturally raised as part of the design, be extremely cautious. A genuine doubled die should have consistent characteristics in the places where the variety is known to show doubling. Random damage will not reproduce those characteristics consistently. The 1972 date is especially fascinating because specialists have documented numerous doubled die varieties from the year. The famous FS101 is the one that gets most of the attention, but other recognized 1972 doubled die varieties exist as well. That means a collector should not automatically throw away a 1972 penny simply because it does not match the famous FS101. However, the majority of these varieties are considerably less valuable than the major FS101, and attribution matters. If you think you have a serious doubled die, compare the coin against established variety references or have it examined by a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. Now let's talk about condition, because condition can completely change the value of a 1972 Lincoln penny. An ordinary circulated example was substantial whereas generally worth only around its face value, perhaps a few cents to a small premium depending on its exact condition and collector interest. In good condition, where Lincoln's major details remain visible but the coin has heavy wear, an ordinary 1972 Philadelphia cent usually remains inexpensive. In fine condition, where more design detail survives, you might still be looking at only a modest premium. Very fine examples with stronger detail can bring somewhat more, and extremely fine or about uncirculated coins can attract collectors who want sharper examples. For an ordinary 1972 no-mint mark penny, a realistic way to think about today's market is that heavily circulated coins are generally worth only a few cents, nicer circulated examples may bring roughly 5 to 20 cents. Better extremely fine and about uncirculated pieces can move into the 20-cent to $1 range. And attractive mint state examples can bring several dollars or more depending on color, grade, and certification. Gem mint state coins are a different story because truly exceptional copper preservation becomes much harder to find. A certified high-grade red example can be worth tens, hundreds, or in extraordinary grades substantially more. These are market ranges rather than guarantees, because actual prices depend on color designation, eye appeal, certification, population, and what buyers are willing to pay at the time of sale. And there is an important distinction between brown, and red copper cents. A brown coin has lost much of its original red coloration through natural oxidation and handling. Red-brown retains some of the original copper color, while red indicates that a large amount of the original red appearance remains. On high-grade copper cents, color can have a major effect on price. A technically high-grade coin with unattractive surfaces may bring less than a beautiful coin of the same numerical grade. The normal 1972 Philadelphia cent has proven that condition alone can create significant differences. A PCGS-certified 1972 red Lincoln Center graded Mississippi 67 Plus red has recorded an auction result of $3,290. That is an extraordinary grade, not a normal pocket change example. Most 1972 pennies will never come close to that level, and this is exactly why you should never hear a headline about a several thousand $1,972 penny, and assume every 1972 penny has that value. Now we reach the coin that makes collectors stop what they are doing. The 1972 double die obverse FS101 has produced dramatically higher prices. A PCGS certified example graded MS67 red sold for $12,925 in a heritage auction sale in October 2014. An even more remarkable example graded PCGS MS67 Plus red sold for $14,400 through heritage auctions in June 2019. Those are documented auction results, and they demonstrate why the 1972 no mint mark Lincoln cent deserves a careful inspection. But remember what made those coins special. They were not ordinary 1972 pennies. They were authenticated examples of a major double die variety in exceptional condition. Circulated FS101 examples can still be valuable even when they have substantial wear. Depending on grade, color, eye appeal, attribution, and market conditions, genuine examples can range from several tens of dollars into the hundreds or much higher. Better mint state examples can reach several hundred or several $1,000s, and top certified pieces can reach five-figure territory. Other recognized 1972 double die varieties can also carry premiums, but their values vary enormously. Some may be worth only modest amounts, while stronger examples of recognized varieties can bring hundreds or more. Never assume that every doubled-looking 1972 penny is worth thousands. Before you even think about selling a possible FS101, inspect the date under good lighting. Look closely at the 1, 9, 7, and 2. Then move to Liberty and examine the letters carefully. Finally, inspect I In God We Trust. On the major double die, the doubling should be obvious and consistent with the known variety. The secondary design should not look like a random scratch. If you have to force yourself to see the doubling after staring through a powerful microscope for 10 minutes, that is a reason to be cautious, not a reason to celebrate. Your next test should be the weight. Put the coin on a reliable scale capable of measuring hundredths of a gram. A normal 1972 bronze cent should be around 3.11 grams. Then inspect the diameter and edge. If the coin is dramatically outside the expected specifications, it could indicate damage, alteration, or an unusual planchet or striking error. But an unusual weight alone does not prove rarity. It is evidence that deserves further investigation. Also examine the surfaces. Never clean a suspected valuable penny. Do not polish it, rub it with an eraser, soak it in chemicals, scrape away dirt, or try to make the copper shine. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surfaces and reduce collector value. If the coin is potentially rare, handling it by the edges and placing it in a proper inert holder is much safer. If your coin appears to be a genuine major double die, professional authentication becomes extremely important. A valuable coin is much easier to sell when its variety and condition have been independently confirmed. Professional grading services can authenticate, grade, and encapsulate significant coins, while recognized variety specialists and numismatic organizations can help with attribution. This matters because valuable double dies have attracted counterfeiters and altered coin sellers, and photographs on a sales listing are not enough to guarantee authenticity. There is another collector fact that makes the 1972 penny fascinating. The double die itself is not the same thing as a traditional striking error such as an off-center strike or clipped planchet. The famous FS101 is a die variety created before the coin was struck. That is why specialists call it a doubled die obverse rather than simply calling it a doubled coin. Understanding that difference can save you from confusing a real collectible variety with ordinary damage or mechanical doubling. So if you have a 1972 Lincoln penny with no mint mark sitting in a jar right now, what should you do? First, do not assume the missing mint mark makes it rare. It should be missing because Philadelphia cents from this period normally carried no mint mark. Second, check the weight and physical specifications. Third, study the date and lettering for genuine doubled die characteristics. Fourth, inspect the coin's condition and original color. Fifth, compare it carefully with established examples of the recognized 1972 doubled die varieties. And finally, if the evidence looks promising, get professional attribution before accepting a low offer or spending the coin. The most exciting lesson about the 1972 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is that rarity is often hiding in the details. Two pennies can have the exact same year, the same lack of a mint mark, the same basic design, and the same copper composition, yet one can be worth only a few cents while another can be worth hundreds, or even thousands because of a tiny difference created inside the mint during production. That is why you should never judge an old penny only by its age. A 1972 penny is not rare simply because it is more than 50 years old. It becomes interesting when the right combination of variety, condition, authenticity, and collector demand comes together. And with the 1972 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, the first place to look is right on Lincoln's face, the date, liberty, and I in God we trust. So before you spend that old 1972 penny, before you toss it into a vending machine, and before you dismiss it as another ordinary piece of copper, turn it over, weigh it, study it, and examine the lettering. It might be nothing more than a common Philadelphia cent, and most will be. But if the doubling matches the famous 1972 FS101, you could be looking at one of the most important Lincoln cent varieties ever found in pocket change. A coin that once represented only 1 cent in everyday America has already crossed the auction block for more than $14,000. And that is exactly why collectors continue searching old jars, inherited collections, coin rolls, drawers, and forgotten pockets. If you have a 1990 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, do not spend it until you know exactly what you are looking at, because this ordinary-looking 1-cent coin has a story that gets much more interesting when you examine its condition, surfaces, and strike. The first thing to understand is that a 1990 Lincoln penny with no mint mark was made at the Philadelphia Mint, and that fact alone does not make it rare. Millions upon millions were produced. But that does not mean every 1990 Philadelphia penny is worthless. The real question is whether your coin has unusually high preservation, a genuine mint error, or another characteristic that separates it from the enormous number of ordinary examples. The year 1990 was an important moment in American history. The United States was entering a new decade after the dramatic changes of the 1980s. The Berlin Wall had fallen only months earlier, the Cold War was approaching its final chapter, and the American economy was beginning to move toward a recession that officially started in the summer of 1990. That same year, NASA launched the Hubble Space Telescope, one of the most important scientific missions in American history. While all of that was happening, the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents for everyday commerce. The 1990 Lincoln cent continued the famous Lincoln Memorial design that had been used since 1959. On the front is Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the date 1990 below his portrait. On a Philadelphia business strike, there is no letter beneath the date. That blank space is not automatically an error. It is the normal identification for a coin struck at Philadelphia. The Denver version carries a D mint mark, while the San Francisco Mint produced proof cents with an S mint mark. The 1990 Philadelphia Lincoln cent had a huge reported mintage of 6,851,765,000 pieces. That enormous production figure tells you something extremely important. A normal circulated 1990 penny with no mint mark is not rare simply because it lacks a mint mark. In fact, the absence of a mint mark is exactly what you should expect from the Philadelphia issue. The coin measures approximately 19 millimeters across and weighs about 2.50 grams. Its composition is copper-plated zinc, which is very different from the older bronze Lincoln cents that were made before 1982. The core is zinc and the outside is a thin copper layer. That construction creates an important authentication clue because damage to the copper plating can expose the lighter colored zinc underneath. Turn the coin over and you will see the Lincoln Memorial surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. The reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo and remained standard throughout this period. The edge is plain, not reeded. Now here is where you need to slow down, because collectors can easily confuse a normal 1990 Philadelphia penny with something much more unusual. Start with the date. Make sure you actually have 1990 and not a similar looking year that has been altered, damaged, or misread. Then look directly beneath the date. On a normal Philadelphia 1990 Lincoln cent, there should be no mint mark. That blank area is completely normal. Next, inspect the coin under good lighting. Look at Lincoln's hair, cheek, jawline, lettering, date, memorial columns, and the rim. A strong strike with clean surfaces and attractive original color can make a major difference to collectors. And this is where condition becomes the dividing line between an ordinary coin and a potentially interesting one. A heavily circulated 1990 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is generally worth around its face value. In good condition, where the major details are worn but still identifiable, it normally has little premium. In fine condition, the coin remains inexpensive. Very fine examples may still trade for only a small premium. Extremely fine and about uncirculated pieces can bring somewhat more if they have attractive surfaces, but these are still common coins. The situation changes when you reach mint state. A mint state 1990 Philadelphia cent has never been circulated, meaning there should be no ordinary wear from spending. But that does not mean every uncirculated coin is valuable. Modern Lincoln cents were produced in enormous quantities, and many survived in rolls, bags, collections, and mint sets. Collectors pay attention to the color designation as well. A brown coin has lost much of its original red coloration. A red-brown coin retains some original red. A red coin has preserved a much greater percentage of its original copper color. For modern cents, exceptional red color combined with very high grade can dramatically improve desirability. At the gem mint state level, tiny differences become extremely important. A coin that looks perfect to your eyes may still have microscopic marks, carbon spots, weak strike characteristics, or other imperfections that prevent it from receiving an elite grade. That is why you should never assume that a shiny 1990 penny is automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. There is, however, a documented reason to take extremely high-grade examples seriously. A PCGS Coinfax record for a 1990 Philadelphia Lincoln cent reports an auction record of $7,200 for an MS-69 red example sold through Heritage Auctions in June 2018. That is an extraordinary result compared with the value of an ordinary circulated 1990 penny, but it represents an exceptional certified coin at an extremely high grade, not the normal value of a 1990 no-mint mark cent. You may hear claims that every 1990 penny without a mint mark is rare, or that simply finding one could make you rich. That is not accurate. The ordinary Philadelphia issue is common. The value comes from exceptional condition, legitimate varieties, or genuine mint errors. And when it comes to errors, you need to know the difference between something that happened at the mint and something that happened decades later in someone's pocket, driveway, toolbox, or coin jar. A genuine mint error occurs during the manufacturing process. Examples can include dramatic off-center strikes, clips, broad strikes, struck-through errors, multiple strikes, or other abnormalities created while the coin was being struck. These can be collectible, but their value depends heavily on how dramatic and clearly identifiable the error is. If your penny has scratches, dents, gouges, flattened lettering, discoloration from chemicals, damage from machines, drilled holes, bent edges, or evidence that someone intentionally altered the surface, those characteristics do not automatically make the coin rare. In fact, damage usually reduces collector appeal. One of the most important rules is this: do not try to create an error. Do not scratch the coin. Do not squeeze it. Do not heat it. Do not polish it. Do not put chemicals on it. A genuine error must come from the mint, and artificial damage generally destroys rather than creates collectible value. There is also a famous 1990 variety that causes enormous confusion. The 1990 no-S proof Lincoln cent is genuinely rare and has brought major prices, but it is not the same thing as an ordinary 1990 Philadelphia business strike with no mint mark. The no-S proof was a proof coin that should have carried the San Francisco S mint mark but did not. These coins have proof characteristics, including specially prepared surfaces and sharp design details, and they are associated with proof sets rather than ordinary pocket change. That distinction could save you from making a very expensive mistake. If your 1990 penny simply looks like an ordinary circulation coin and has no mint mark, you most likely have the standard Philadelphia issue. If, however, it has unmistakable proof characteristics and no S mint mark, that is a completely different situation and deserves professional examination. The documented auction history of the 1990 no-S proof demonstrates just how dramatic the difference can be. Certified examples have sold for thousands of dollars, with an exceptionally high-grade example recorded at $20,700. Another documented no-S proof variety record reached $8,813. Those figures are real auction records for the rare proof error, not normal prices for a Philadelphia circulation strike. If something looks suspicious, compare it carefully with an ordinary 1990 Philadelphia cent. Differences that appear only because of wear, corrosion, scratches, or lighting should not automatically be treated as varieties. For serious possibilities, authentication matters. A valuable coin should be examined by an experienced numismatist or submitted to a reputable professional grading service. Certification becomes particularly important when a coin appears to be an unusual error or an exceptionally high-grade example, because a professional examination can separate genuine mint characteristics from damage and alteration. And before you sell anything, resist the temptation to clean it. This is one of the biggest mistakes inexperienced collectors make. A dirty-looking coin may seem like it needs polishing, but cleaning can leave permanent hairlines and unnatural surfaces. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces, even when the coin is not perfectly bright. For preservation, handle the penny by its edges, keep it away from moisture and harsh chemicals, and store it in an appropriate inert holder. Avoid rubbing the surfaces with cloth or paper towels. If you believe the coin might be valuable, treat it like a collectible rather than like ordinary change. A heavily circulated example is generally worth about 1 cent. Better circulated examples may bring a small premium depending on demand, but they are not normally valuable. Ordinary uncirculated pieces can range from a few cents to a few dollars depending on grade and color. High-grade certified examples can command substantially more, and truly exceptional MS-69 red pieces have demonstrated auction results in the thousands. But remember that auction records are not promises. A record price represents one specific coin, at one specific grade, sold under one specific set of market conditions. Your coin could be worth considerably less. The biggest lesson from the 1990 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is not that every example is a hidden fortune. It is that condition, authenticity, and identification matter far more than the year alone. A coin that looks ordinary in your hand can become much more interesting when you examine every detail under magnification. The date, the empty mint mark position, the surfaces, the color, the strike, the reverse design, the weight, and any unusual characteristics all tell part of the story. And think about how many of these coins disappeared into American life. They were placed into cash registers, carried in pockets, dropped into couch cushions, saved in jars, thrown into drawers, and forgotten for decades. Most are still just ordinary Lincoln cents. But a tiny number can survive in extraordinary condition or with legitimate mint-made abnormalities, and those are exactly the coins collectors want to find. So before you spend that 1990 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, flip it over, examine it closely, and ask yourself whether you are holding an ordinary Philadelphia cent or something that deserves a professional second look. Check your pocket change. Search those old coin jars. Go through inherited collections, forgotten rolls, drawers, and boxes of pennies that have been sitting untouched for years. You do not need to assume every old-looking coin is worth a fortune. You simply need to know what you are looking at. But there is one reason collectors still stop and examine these cents carefully. The 1990 60 Lincoln penny was struck in enormous numbers, yet the very best examples can command surprisingly strong premiums, and unusual mint errors can change the story completely. One certified 1990 60 cent reached $3,565 at auction in MS-69, proving that condition can transform a modern penny into a serious collectible. So before you spend that 1990 60 penny, take a closer look, because the difference between an ordinary cent and a premium example can sometimes be hidden in details that are almost impossible to see without knowing exactly where to look. The story begins in 1996, a year when the United States was moving rapidly into the modern digital age. The internet was expanding into American homes, personal computers were becoming increasingly common, and the country was preparing for the approaching new millennium. Yet at the same time, Americans were still using billions of 1-cent coins every year for everyday purchases. The Lincoln cent remained one of the most familiar pieces of American money, and the United States Mint needed huge quantities to keep commerce supplied. That demand helped produce an enormous number of 1990 60 Lincoln cents at the Denver Mint. The Denver Mint struck 6,510,795,000 Lincoln cents dated 1996. That number is absolutely enormous, and it immediately tells us something important. A normal 1990 60 penny is not rare simply because it carries the 1996 date and the D Mint mark. In fact, collectors can still find ordinary examples without much difficulty. But coin collecting is rarely just about how many coins were originally made. Condition, color, strike quality, errors, varieties, and collector demand can completely change the value of an individual coin. The 1990 60 Lincoln cent belongs to the Memorial Reverse era of the Lincoln cent series. Abraham Lincoln appears on the obverse, based on the famous design originally created by Victor David Brenner. The Lincoln Memorial appears on the reverse, a design introduced in 1959 and created by Frank Gasparo. The coin has a plain edge, measures approximately 19 millimeters across, and weighs about 2.50 grams. Unlike the older copper cents produced before 1982, this 1990 60 cent is made from a copper-plated zinc composition. Inside is a zinc core, surrounded by a thin layer of copper. That difference is extremely important when you are checking a coin because it affects both its weight and the way damage appears on its surface. Now look at the obverse. You should see the date 1996 beneath Lincoln's portrait. Just below the date, and toward the right is the small D Mint mark. That D is what identifies this coin as having been struck at Denver. If there is no mint mark, you are looking at a different issue, most likely the Philadelphia version. If the coin has an S, it belongs to the San Francisco proof production rather than the normal Denver circulation issue. For this particular coin, the D must be present if you are trying to identify a genuine 1990 60 Lincoln cent. Flip the coin over and you will see the Lincoln Memorial surrounded by United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. The reverse design is familiar to millions of collectors, but that does not mean every detail should be ignored. Look at the lettering, the memorial columns, the rim, and the overall strike. A genuine mint-made problem should have characteristics consistent with the manufacturing process, while damage that happened after the coin left the mint usually looks very different. This is where many beginning collectors make an expensive mistake. They see a strange line, a flattened letter, discoloration, or unusual shape and immediately call it a mint error. But unusual does not automatically mean valuable. A true mint error occurs during production. Post-mint damage happens after the coin has left the mint. A penny can be squeezed, scratched, heated, plated, chemically altered, ground down, bent, or exposed to harsh substances and end up looking extremely unusual. That does not make it a valuable era coin. For example, a copper-colored or yellowish 1996 cent might look exciting, but unusual coloration by itself is not evidence of a rare mint era. Zinc cents can also suffer plating problems, environmental damage, chemical changes, or alterations after leaving the mint. If the surface looks suspicious, the safest approach is to compare it with known examples and, when the stakes are high, have the coin examined by a qualified professional. The same rule applies to doubling. If you see what looks like a second image around the date, lettering, or other design elements, do not immediately assume you have found a rare doubled die. Genuine doubled dies have specific characteristics caused during die production. Machine doubling, die deterioration, and ordinary post-mint damage can create completely different appearances. Machine doubling often produces a flat, shelf-like secondary image rather than the rounded, clearly separated design associated with true hub doubling. The 1996 date is also important because the mint's die-making technology was changing around this period. The traditional multiple squeeze hubbing process was being replaced by single squeeze technology, changing the way doubled die varieties could occur. That makes it especially important not to treat every bit of apparent doubling on a 1996 cent as a major variety. Research into specific attribution is essential before assigning a premium value. Another detail collectors sometimes investigate on Lincoln cents is the spacing between the A and M in America on the reverse. This is known as the wide AM and close AM distinction on certain dates. But this is exactly where you need to be careful with a 1996 cent. The famous valuable wide AM examples are associated with specific dates and mint combinations, and you should never assume that simply seeing a particular spacing on a 1996 automatically creates a rare variety. The 1996 should be evaluated on its own documented characteristics rather than borrowing a famous variety from another year. Now let's talk about condition, because this is where the 1996 Lincoln cent becomes much more interesting. Most circulated examples are worth very little over face value. A heavily worn coin with scratches, discoloration, rim damage, or other circulation problems generally has little collector premium. A coin that has spent years moving through cash registers and pockets can still be fun to collect, but its condition usually keeps its value close to the amount stamped on it. In good condition, Lincoln's portrait is heavily worn and many fine details are gone. In fine condition, more of the design remains, but significant wear is still obvious. Very fine coins show stronger detail, while extremely fine examples have only light wear on the highest portions of Lincoln's portrait and the reverse design. About uncirculated examples show only tiny traces of circulation and may still retain much of their original appearance. Then we reach mint state. This is where things become much more competitive. A mint state 1996 has not been circulated, although it can still contain contact marks from the manufacturing and handling process. Collectors examine the surfaces, strike, luster, color, and overall eye appeal extremely carefully. A coin graded MS60 is very different from an MS65, and an MS65 is dramatically different from an MS69 when it comes to the modern Lincoln cent market. Color also matters. Lincoln cents are commonly classified as brown, red-brown, or red. A bright original red example with strong luster can be much more desirable than a brown example of the same grade. But be careful. Artificially coloring or treating a coin does not create genuine red original mint color. Collectors and grading services can examine whether the appearance is consistent with original surfaces. For the ordinary 1996 Lincoln cent, realistic values are generally modest. Circulated examples usually remain around face value, while nicer uncirculated pieces can bring a small premium. In lower mint state grades, the coin may sell for only a modest amount, while premium red examples in higher grades can bring substantially more. The major jump happens at the extreme top of the grading scale. The documented auction record gives us a perfect example. A 1990-60 Lincoln cent graded MS-69 by PCGS sold for $3,565 at a Bowers and Marina auction on November 1, 2008. That is not the value of every 1990-60 penny. It is the result achieved by an exceptionally high-grade certified specimen. That distinction is critical. You should never look at a record price and assume your circulated penny is worth thousands. For a normal circulated 1990-60, think in terms of face value or a small premium depending on appearance. Ordinary uncirculated pieces may be worth modest amounts, while high-grade red examples can move into the tens of dollars or beyond depending on certification, grade, and market demand. At the very highest certified grades, the value can rise into the hundreds, or even thousands. The $3,565 auction record demonstrates just how powerful condition can become when a modern coin reaches an extraordinary grade. And there is another important lesson here. A coin does not have to be old to be collectible. The 1990-60 cent is only about 3 decades old, yet top-grade examples can already attract serious competition. Modern collectors often build registry sets, and when only a limited number of coins achieve an elite grade, competition for the finest specimens can become intense. Now imagine you find a 1990-60 cent that appears completely different from the others in your collection. Maybe it is dramatically off-center. Maybe part of the design is missing. Maybe the coin has an unusual broad strike, a major die break, a clipped planchet, or another feature that appears impossible to explain through ordinary wear. This is where you should stop and investigate instead of cleaning or altering the coin. A genuine off-center strike can be particularly interesting because the entire design may be shifted toward one side of the blank. The farther the design is displaced while still retaining identifiable features such as the date, the more dramatic the error can become. But the exact value depends on the size and nature of the error, the condition, the visibility of the date, and collector demand. There is no single price for every 1990-60 error. This is also why weighing the coin can be useful. A normal 1990-60 cent should be approximately 2.50 grams. If your scale shows a significantly different result, do not automatically celebrate. A damaged, corroded, plated, altered, or heavily worn coin can also show an unusual weight. But a meaningful weight difference combined with an unmistakable mint production feature deserves further investigation. Use a scale accurate to at least 1/100th of a gram if possible. Check the diameter as well. A normal coin should be around 19 millimeters. Examine the edge, because the edge can provide clues about whether the coin is intact or has been manipulated. And most importantly, never clean a potentially valuable coin. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and reduce collector value. If you believe you have discovered a major mint error, photograph both sides under good lighting, avoid touching the surfaces unnecessarily, and compare the coin with trusted reference examples. If the feature still appears significant, professional authentication can be worthwhile. Certification becomes especially important when a coin has the potential to be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. There is also a fascinating collector fact about the 1990-60 cent. Despite its enormous mintage, PCGS estimates that only a fraction of the original production survives in collectible condition, and the number of coins surviving in truly elite grades is much smaller. That does not make the entire issue rare. It simply shows how survival and condition can create rarity within a huge mintage. So if you have a 1990-60 Lincoln penny, what should you do right now? First, confirm the date. Make sure it actually says 1996. Second, find the D mint mark beneath Lincoln's portrait. Third, inspect the surfaces for unusual mint-made characteristics rather than ordinary scratches and damage. Fourth, weigh the coin. Fifth, examine the color and luster. Sixth, look closely at the date, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the reverse lettering for genuine double details. And finally, compare any unusual feature with documented examples before assuming you have a rare variety. The most important thing is not to let an exciting internet headline convince you that every 1990-60 penny is worth thousands. The overwhelming majority are not. The real opportunity comes from knowing the difference between an ordinary coin and an exceptional one. A common coin in extraordinary condition can be valuable. A dramatic genuine mint error can be valuable. A recognized variety can be valuable. But ordinary wear, scratches, discoloration, and post-mint alterations usually are not. That is what makes the 1996 Lincoln penny worth searching. It is not because every coin is secretly a fortune. It is because the hobby rewards people who learn to recognize the exceptions. So the next time you open an old coin jar, search through a box of pennies, or receive a handful of change, do not automatically throw the 1996 Lincoln cent back into circulation. Turn it over. Check the date. Find that little D. Study Lincoln's portrait. Examine the reverse. Weigh it if something seems unusual. Look for original luster and exceptional preservation. And if you discover a genuine mint error or an extraordinarily high-grade specimen, that ordinary-looking penny could suddenly become a very different kind of collectible. The 1996 Lincoln penny may have been made by the billions, but the finest survivors and genuine mint errors tell a completely different story. One tiny coin can carry the history of an entire era, and sometimes the most exciting discovery is not sitting behind glass in a museum. It is hiding in an old collection, a forgotten jar, or the change sitting in your hand right now. So check your 1996 pennies carefully, because you will never know what you have until you actually look. If you enjoyed this coin discovery, make sure you like this video, leave a comment telling me whether you have ever found a 1996 Lincoln penny, and subscribe for more rare coin discoveries, valuable varieties, and hidden treasures that could be waiting in your pocket change. The 1980 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is not automatically rare, and that is exactly what makes this coin so interesting. Millions were made, most are still inexpensive, but a small number of unusually well-preserved examples and recognized varieties can attract serious collector attention. So before you throw one into a jar, spend it at a store, or assume that the missing mint mark means something went wrong, there are several things you need to know. The 1980 Lincoln penny with no mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. In 1980, Philadelphia produced more than 7.4 billion Lincoln cents, making this a very common date in terms of original production. But common does not mean every surviving example is equal. The condition of the individual coin, its color, strike, surface quality, and especially whether it has a recognized variety can completely change the collector interest. To understand this penny, we have to go back to 1980. The United States was entering a difficult economic period. Inflation was high, interest rates were rising, and Americans were dealing with major changes in energy prices and the economy. Ronald Reagan had not yet taken office, Jimmy Carter was president, and the country was approaching the end of the decade that had already brought major changes to American daily life. Through all of this, the humble Lincoln cent continued doing its job in commerce. The Lincoln Memorial design had been introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln remained on the obverse, while Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design appeared on the reverse. That meant the 1980 penny carried a design that had already become familiar to an entire generation of Americans. Look closely at the front of the coin. You should see the date 1980 beneath Lincoln's portrait. Directly below the date, there should be no mint mark. That absence is important, but it is not an error. For this coin, no mint mark indicates Philadelphia production. The Denver Mint used a D, while San Francisco used an S on the appropriate proof issues. So if you have a regular 1980 Lincoln cent and there is no letter beneath the date, you are looking at the Philadelphia issue. Now comes another important detail. The 1980 Lincoln cent was made from the traditional copper-based composition used for cents during this period. It contains approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures approximately 19 millimeters across. The edge is plain rather than reeded. That weight gives you one useful authentication clue. If your coin is dramatically outside the expected weight, Do not immediately assume you have discovered a spectacular error. First, consider damage, corrosion, plating, alteration, or an inaccurate scale. A genuine mint error involving the wrong planchet can create a meaningful difference, but unusual weight by itself is not proof of rarity. The first thing you should do with a 1980 no mint mark Lincoln penny is examine the date carefully. Make sure the coin really says 1980. Then inspect the area beneath the date. There should be no mint letter. Next, examine Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, the rim, and the reverse design. Look at the Lincoln Memorial and the words United States of America, 1 cent, and E pluribus unum. And this is where things become much more interesting. Collectors and variety specialists have documented a doubled die variety for the 1980 Philadelphia Lincoln cent. This is not the same thing as a coin that simply looks doubled because of damage or machine doubling. A genuine doubled die is created during the die making process, before the die strikes coins. The doubling can appear as distinct separation or secondary images in specific design elements. The documented 1980 doubled die variety is catalogued by specialists, including the FS101 designation. If you believe your 1980 penny has doubling, do not rush to celebrate. This is one of the biggest mistakes beginning collectors make. A coin can show flat, shelf-like, or mechanical-looking doubling caused during the striking process, and that does not automatically make it a valuable doubled die. Genuine doubled die characteristics need to match the recognized variety. Post-mint damage is another major problem. A penny that has been scraped, squeezed, hit, polished, chemically altered, or exposed to harsh conditions can develop strange shapes and distorted lettering. Those changes happened after the coin left the mint. Collectors generally do not treat ordinary damage as a valuable mint error. The same principle applies to color. A beautiful bright red 1980 Lincoln cent can be more desirable than a dark brown example in the same grade, but color alone does not prove rarity. Copper naturally changes appearance as it ages and reacts with its environment. A coin that has been artificially cleaned or recolored can actually become less desirable to serious collectors. Now let's talk about condition, because this is where an ordinary 1980 penny can separate itself from a truly desirable example. A heavily circulated coin may have scratches, discoloration, flattened details, and significant wear. In lower circulated grades, a normal 1980 Philadelphia cent generally has little premium over its face value unless it has a special variety or unusual error. In good condition, Lincoln's major design elements remain identifiable, but the coin has obvious wear. In fine condition, more detail survives in Lincoln's hair and facial features. Very fine examples have stronger remaining detail, while extremely fine examples show only light wear on the highest points. About uncirculated examples have very limited circulation wear and can begin attracting more collector interest. Then you reach mint state. A mint state 1980 no mint mark Lincoln cent has never experienced normal circulation wear, although it can still have marks from handling, storage, or contact with other coins. At the higher mint state levels, surface quality becomes extremely important. Collectors begin looking for strong strikes, clean fields, attractive color, and minimal contact marks. Gem mint state examples are where the competition becomes much more serious. A bright red coin with exceptional surfaces can be worth dramatically more than an ordinary circulated specimen. And this is why two pennies that look almost identical to a casual observer can have completely different market values. For ordinary 1980 Philadelphia cents, realistic values are generally modest. Circulated examples are commonly worth only a few cents when sold individually, with collector premiums depending heavily on quality. Attractive uncirculated examples can bring more, while certified high-grade red examples can move into the tens or hundreds of dollars depending on grade and market demand. There is documented evidence that exceptional coins can go much higher. One certified 1980 Philadelphia Lincoln cent graded mint state 67 red sold at auction for $374 in 2006. Another recorded auction appearance for the same issue brought $129.25 in 2017. These results show something important. A 1980 penny does not need to be an ancient coin to command a premium, but the premium generally comes from exceptional preservation and scarcity at the highest grades, not simply from the date. There is also a documented auction record for a 1980 Philadelphia cent graded mint state 63 brown that reached $1,840 in a 2003 auction. That result is an excellent reminder that auction records can sometimes be influenced by exceptional circumstances, registry competition, provenance, or the specific characteristics of an individual coin. It should not be interpreted as saying every 1980 penny is worth thousands of dollars. And that distinction is extremely important when you see dramatic claims online. A normal 1980 no-mint mark penny is not $1 million coin. It is not automatically worth thousands. It is not rare simply because it lacks a mint mark. But a recognized doubled die, a genuine major mint error, or an exceptionally high-grade certified specimen can create a completely different collecting story. If you think you have a genuine mint error, start with the basics. Check the weight using an accurate digital scale. Measure the diameter if necessary. Examine the coin under good lighting and magnification. Compare the suspected error with known examples from reliable numismatic references. Look for evidence that the feature was created during the striking process rather than afterward. For serious possibilities, professional authentication is worth considering. A reputable grading service can examine the coin, determine whether the variety or error is genuine, and assign a grade. That certification can make a major difference when selling an important coin because buyers are often willing to pay more for a professionally authenticated and graded example. There is one thing you should never do before getting a potentially valuable coin examined. Do not clean it. Do not scrub it with a cloth. Do not use metal polish. Do not soak it in chemicals. Do not try to make an old copper penny look shiny. Cleaning can leave permanent hairline scratches or unnatural surfaces, and can significantly reduce collector appeal. Instead, handle the coin by its edges and keep it in a proper holder designed for collectible coins. Billions may have been produced, but relatively few coins survive decades later with the combination of brilliant original red color, strong strike, clean surfaces, and extremely high certified grades that advanced collectors want. Add a legitimate recognized variety or major mint error, and the equation changes again. That means the next 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln penny you encounter deserves at least a second look. Check the date. Check beneath the date for the absence of a mint mark. Check the weight. Examine the surfaces. Look closely at the lettering and design elements for recognized doubling. Look at the color. Look at the condition. And most importantly, separate genuine mint characteristics from damage that happened after the coin left the mint. The real lesson of the 1980 Lincoln penny is not that every example is secretly worth a fortune. The real lesson is that value comes from details. A coin can be common in overall production and still become difficult to find in extraordinary condition. A tiny variety can turn an ordinary-looking cent into a specialist collectible. And a genuine mint error can transform a 1-cent piece into something collectors are willing to compete for. So the next time you open an old coin jar, sort through a box of pennies, or discover a forgotten collection in a drawer, slow down when you see 1980. Look underneath Lincoln's portrait. If there is no mint mark, you have the Philadelphia issue. Then take a closer look. You might have nothing more than a common circulated cent, and that is perfectly normal. But if the coin has exceptional preservation, unusual characteristics, or a recognized variety, you may have found something worth investigating before it ever reaches the cash register. But that is exactly what makes this coin interesting. When a coin is common, the real opportunity is usually hidden in condition, unusual varieties, or genuine mint errors, and the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny has several reasons collectors still take a second look. The coin you are looking for was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and because Philadelphia coins did not carry a mint mark on Lincoln cents, the absence of a letter beneath the date is exactly what you should expect. That small detail is important because a 1981 penny with no mint mark is fundamentally different from a 1981 penny struck at Denver and different again from the proof versions made at San Francisco. So when you find a 1981 Lincoln cent, start with the date, then look directly underneath it. If there is no D and no S, you have the Philadelphia issue we are talking about today. In 1981, America was entering a fascinating period of economic and political change. Ronald Reagan became president in January. Inflation and interest rates were major concerns, gasoline prices had become an everyday economic issue, and the country was moving deeper into the technology and economic changes that would define the decade. The Space Shuttle program also captured national attention, with Columbia making its first orbital flight in April. Somewhere in the middle of all of that, the United States Mint was producing billions of 1-cent coins that most Americans would never think twice about. The purpose of the Lincoln cent was simple. It was everyday money, designed to handle countless small transactions and provide a durable denomination for commerce. But by 1981, the cent was also facing an important problem. Copper prices had been rising, and the cost of producing traditional copper cents was becoming increasingly significant. The mint was already working toward changing the cent's composition. That change would arrive in 1982, when copper-plated zinc cents began replacing the traditional bronze alloy. That means 1981 sits directly on the edge of one of the most important composition changes in modern Lincoln cent history. And this is one reason collectors find 1981 cents especially interesting. A normal 1981 Philadelphia Lincoln cent is still made from the traditional copper alloy used for decades. Its standard composition is 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures approximately 19 millimeters across. The edge is plain rather than reeded. If you have a precision scale, 3.11 grams is an important number to remember, because weight can help separate an ordinary 1981 cent from certain unusual pieces. Turn the coin over and you will see the famous Lincoln Memorial reverse designed by Frank Gasparo. On the front is Abraham Lincoln, facing right, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date. On the reverse is the Lincoln Memorial surrounded by United States of America, 1 cent, and E Pluribus Unum, with the initials of designer Frank Gasparo near the lower right area of the memorial. This design had already been in circulation for more than 2 decades by 1981, but it would remain on the cent until the major redesigns that began in 2009. Now here is where the numbers become important. The Philadelphia Mint produced 7,491,750,000 Lincoln cents dated 1981. That is more than 7 billion coins. So if someone tells you that every 1981 penny without a mint mark is extremely rare or automatically worth thousands of dollars, be very careful. The normal coin is common. The value comes from something unusual about the individual specimen. A typical circulated 1981 no-mint mark cent with ordinary wear is generally worth around face value, and even nice circulated examples usually do not bring dramatic premiums. In good condition, where Lincoln's major features are heavily worn but still identifiable, you are generally looking at a coin worth only a few cents at most in ordinary circumstances. Fine condition brings somewhat better detail, but the coin is still generally inexpensive. Very fine examples can be more attractive to collectors, especially when the original copper color is preserved, but most ordinary circulated examples remain inexpensive. When you reach extremely fine and about uncirculated condition, things become more interesting, but condition alone does not transform a common 1981 cent into a fortune. An extremely attractive example with strong original color and minimal marks may bring a premium, particularly to someone assembling a high-quality Lincoln Memorial collection. About uncirculated pieces can be worth modest amounts, while genuinely uncirculated examples become more desirable because collectors want coins with sharp details, original luster, and minimal contact marks. Then we reach mint state, where the game changes. A mint state 1981 no-mint mark cent has never experienced normal circulation wear, although it can still have marks from handling and production. Brown, and red designations matter because copper naturally changes color over time. A bright original red Lincoln cent is generally much more desirable than a brown example of the same grade. At the lower mint state levels, an ordinary 1981 Philadelphia cent may still be worth only a modest premium. But as you move toward MS65, MS66, and especially the finest certified grades, prices can rise substantially because the supply of truly exceptional survivors becomes much smaller. A certified MS66 brown example has a documented auction record of $700, while a 1981 Lincoln cent in MS68 red has reached a documented auction price of $3,000. Those numbers show something important. The normal 1981 penny is not a $3,000 coin, but an exceptionally preserved specimen can become a serious collectible. And there is another important lesson here. Never confuse a high auction record with the value of an average coin. An auction record represents a particular coin, a particular grade, a particular color designation, and a particular market at a particular moment. It does not mean every 1981 no-mint mark cent is worth anything close to that amount. Now take your coin and inspect the date carefully. The digits should have the normal appearance expected for a 1981 Lincoln cent. Look at the lettering around the coin and then examine Lincoln's portrait under magnification. If you see what looks like doubling, stop before assuming you have discovered a rare doubled die. This is one of the biggest traps in modern coin collecting. True doubled dies are created during the die manufacturing process, when a design impression is transferred more than once in a misaligned way. The resulting doubling is part of the die itself, so every coin struck from that particular die can show the same characteristic doubling. Machine doubling is different. It can make letters or numbers appear shifted, flattened, or doubled because of movement during the striking process. It is common and usually carries little or no premium. Post-mint damage is different again. A coin can be hit, scraped, squeezed, polished, chemically treated, or altered after leaving the mint. Damage can create shapes that look like doubling, missing letters, unusual edges, or strange surfaces. But if the feature was created after the coin left the mint, it is not a valuable mint error. So what should genuine doubling look like? Under magnification, genuine doubled die characteristics tend to have clear separation and raised design elements that are part of the coin's original design. Damage often looks flattened, scraped, irregular, or pushed into the surface. If you think your 1981 no-mint mark cent has dramatic doubling, compare the exact feature against trusted variety references and, if the coin appears significant, have it examined by an experienced variety specialist. There are reports and references for 1981 Philadelphia doubled die material, including an FS 101 attribution, but this is not a famous, universally valuable variety like the 1955 doubled die cent or the 1972 major doubled die. The market for minor or less established varieties can also be inconsistent. That means you should not assume a slightly thick date or unusual lettering is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars without attribution. And this brings us to genuine mint errors, where a normal 1981 penny can become dramatically more interesting. A wrong planchet error occurs when a blank intended for another denomination is accidentally fed into the cent press and receives Lincoln cent designs. A genuine wrong planchet 1981 Lincoln cent can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on exactly what happened, the planchet involved, the condition, and authentication. One particularly notable 1981 Lincoln cent error struck on a planchet intended for a 1981 Kennedy $half has been documented with a $13,200 auction result in 2021. Other 1981 cents struck on dime planchets have also produced significant auction results. These are not normal 1981 pennies. They are dramatic mint errors, and that distinction is everything. If your coin looks unusually small, unusually thin, has a strange color, or weighs substantially less than the normal 3.11 grams, do not immediately assume it is damaged. Measure it carefully. A genuine cent should be about 19 millimeters in diameter. A suspected wrong planchet should be examined for weight, diameter, thickness, edge characteristics, and how the design fits on the blank. You should also look closely at the edge. A normal 1981 Philadelphia cent has a plain edge. An unusual edge can sometimes reveal an error, but it can also reveal post-mint damage. For example, someone may have squeezed or altered a coin, and that can produce a strange rim that has nothing to do with the mint. Genuine errors generally have physical characteristics that make sense from the mechanics of the minting process. There are also other possible mint errors from this era, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, die caps, clips, struck-through errors, double strikes, and other striking abnormalities. But the key word is genuine. A coin being weird does not automatically make it valuable. The more dramatic the supposed error, the more important professional authentication becomes. Now think about condition. If your 1981 penny has scratches, heavy wear, dark discoloration, corrosion, or evidence of cleaning, those factors can reduce collector interest. Never polish an old copper cent because you think you are making it look better. A shiny coin is not necessarily a valuable coin. Artificially bright surfaces can actually hurt the value because collectors generally prefer original surfaces. If your coin is in excellent condition, hold it only by the edges. Avoid rubbing the surfaces with your fingers. Do not use abrasive cloths, metal polish, household chemicals, vinegar, or other cleaning products. If you believe you have a rare error, place the coin in a proper non-damaging holder and have it evaluated rather than trying to improve its appearance yourself. For ordinary 1981 Philadelphia cents, realistic values today are generally modest. A heavily circulated example may be worth 1 cent. Better circulated examples can bring a few cents. Attractive about uncirculated pieces may bring a modest premium, while uncirculated red examples can move into the dollar range depending on grade and demand. High-grade certified coins can move into tens or hundreds of dollars, and exceptional certified pieces have reached far higher levels. The documented $700 auction result for an MS-66 brown specimen and the $3,000 result for an MS-68 red specimen demonstrate how dramatically the upper end can separate from ordinary examples. But if you find a genuine major mint error, the story changes completely. A wrong planchet or dramatic striking error can potentially be worth hundreds, thousands, or in exceptional cases much more. The exact value depends on the error type and whether a respected grading service confirms it. Never value an alleged error based on an online asking price. An asking price is simply what someone hopes to receive. A completed sale is much stronger evidence. There is another fascinating reason collectors search through 1981 cents. These coins were produced immediately before the composition transition that created the famous 1982 varieties. Collectors who build complete Lincoln cent collections often want representative examples from the final years of the traditional copper composition. That historical connection gives the 1981 cent a place in the larger story of American coinage, even though most individual examples are common. So if you have one in front of you right now, take a slow look. Confirm the date is 1981. Confirm there is no mint mark beneath the date. Check the weight and diameter if you have the equipment. Examine the copper color and surface. Study the date and lettering under magnification. Look for genuine doubling rather than machine doubling. Inspect the edge for anything unusual. Then examine the reverse for signs of an off-center strike, broad strike, die cap, struck-through area, or other abnormal mint-made feature. And if something truly unusual appears, do not clean it, do not scrape it, and do not rush to sell it to the first person who offers you money. Get a second opinion. For potentially valuable errors, professional authentication can make the difference between a fascinating discovery and an expensive mistake. The most important thing to remember is that the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is valuable because of what makes an individual example different, not simply because it says 1981. 7 billion plus were made in Philadelphia, so the ordinary coin is common. But the right combination of exceptional condition, original red color, a recognized variety, or a dramatic genuine mint error can turn an ordinary-looking penny into something collectors seriously want. And that is the real excitement of coin hunting. You do not need to own a famous collection to make an interesting discovery. Sometimes the coin has already been sitting quietly in an old jar for decades. It may be hiding in a forgotten box, an inherited collection, a bank roll, or a pocket full of change. So before you spend that 1981 penny, look again. Check the date. Check the missing mint mark. Check the weight. Check the surface. Check the design. Check for genuine errors. And most importantly, check the condition. Because while most 1981 no mint mark Lincoln pennies are ordinary cents, the exceptional ones can tell a very different story. That little copper coin was born during a changing America, survived decades of circulation, passed through countless hands, and may still be waiting for someone with sharp enough eyes to recognize what makes it special. So check your pocket change, search those old coin jars, open those forgotten collections, and take another look at the pennies you were ready to ignore. What if one of the most overlooked pennies in your pocket change is a 2015 Lincoln penny that looks completely ordinary, but under the right conditions could be worth far more than 1 cent? The truth about this coin is more interesting than the internet rumors, because the standard 2015 Lincoln penny is not a rare coin at all. In fact, billions were produced. But that does not mean every example is worthless. The rare opportunity comes from condition, exceptional quality, unusual varieties, and genuine mint errors. So before you spend a 2015 penny, there are a few things you absolutely need to check. The 2015 Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint during a period when the United States was still producing enormous numbers of 1-cent coins for everyday commerce. The United States was changing rapidly in 2015. Barack Obama was president, smartphones and digital payments were becoming an even bigger part of daily life, and Americans were still using billions of pennies in cash transactions. At the same time, the United States Mint continued producing Lincoln cents because the 1-cent denomination remained legal tender and was still needed to support cash transactions. The 2015 penny belongs to the modern Lincoln Shield cent series that began in 2010. The coin carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. Lincoln faces right, with the word Liberty beside him, the date 2015 below, and the familiar motto "In God We Trust" above. Just below the date, you can find the small D mint mark. That D is extremely important for this particular coin because it tells you that your penny was struck at the Denver Mint. Turn the coin over and the design changes dramatically from the old Lincoln Memorial reverse used on earlier pennies. The reverse features the Union Shield, with 13 stripes representing the original colonies, the denomination 1 cent, and the motto E Pluribus Unum. This shield design was created for the Lincoln cent by Lindell Bass, with engraving work associated with Joseph Mena. This design was intended to symbolize the preservation of the United States and the Union of the States. Now here is one of the first things that makes the 2015 penny different from many older Lincoln cents. It is not a traditional solid copper cent. The 2015 Lincoln penny is made from copper-plated zinc. Beneath the thin copper-colored outer layer is a zinc core. The coin weighs approximately 2.50 grams and measures approximately 19 millimeters across. Its edge is plain, without reading. That composition creates an important identification test. If you have a genuine 2015 Lincoln penny, it should normally be close to 2.50 grams on an accurate digital scale. A small difference can happen because of wear, dirt, environmental damage, or normal manufacturing tolerances, but a dramatically different weight deserves investigation. Do not immediately assume a different weight means a valuable error. A damaged coin can lose metal, and a coin with contamination can sometimes weigh more. The Denver Mint produced approximately 4.674 billion Lincoln cents dated 2015. That enormous mintage tells us something very important. The ordinary 2015 penny is common. You should not expect a normal circulated example to suddenly be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars simply because it has the 2015 date and AD mint mark. This is where responsible coin collecting becomes important. A common coin can still become collectible when it reaches an unusually high grade. Modern Lincoln cents often suffer from small scratches, contact marks, spots, discoloration, and other damage before they ever reach a collector. Billions may have been struck, but only a much smaller number survive in truly exceptional condition. Imagine opening a roll of pennies and finding a 2015 D that still looks almost exactly like it did when it left the mint. The copper color is bright and original. Lincoln's hair is sharply defined. The letters are crisp. The shield on the reverse is clean and well struck. There are very few marks on the surfaces. That is when the conversation changes from a 1-cent coin to a condition rarity. Before we talk about value, however, you need to know exactly what to inspect. Start with the date. Make sure it clearly reads 2015. Then move directly to the mint mark. Look below the date for the small d. A genuine 2015 D should have the Denver Mint mark in the correct position and style for the issue. Be careful with altered coins. A person can manipulate a mint mark or damage the area around it in an attempt to make an ordinary coin look unusual. Next, inspect the portrait of Lincoln. Look at the hair, ear, jawline, lettering, and date under magnification. Then examine the reverse. Pay particular attention to the lettering, the shield, the central vertical lines, and the rim. A 10-power loop can be extremely useful for this kind of examination. And now we reach one of the most misunderstood subjects in modern coin collecting, doubling. You may look at a 2015 D penny and notice what appears to be a second outline around a letter, number, or design element. That does not automatically mean you have a doubled die. Modern sense can show machine doubling, die deterioration, die chips, die cracks, strike irregularities, and other forms of distortion that can look dramatic under magnification. A genuine doubled die is created during the die manufacturing process, meaning the unusual doubled design is actually part of the die used to strike the coins. Machine doubling is different. It happens during the striking process and usually produces a flattened, shelf-like appearance rather than the more distinct separation associated with true hub doubling. Some collectors have reported and studied 2015 D shield cent doubled die and die varieties, including examples involving unusual doubling around Lincoln's ear and other design areas. However, this is exactly where caution is necessary. Not every coin advertised online as a 2015 D doubled die has been authenticated, and asking prices on online marketplaces are not the same thing as verified auction results. If you believe your coin has a significant doubled die, compare it with established variety references or have it examined by a recognized attribution service or experienced numismatist. The same warning applies to other supposed errors. An off-center strike can be valuable if it clearly occurred at the mint and retains the characteristics of a genuine mint error. A broad strike can also attract collectors when the coin was struck outside the normal collar and has the appropriate evidence of a mint striking error. A genuine struck-through error can occur when foreign material interferes with the striking process. Die cracks, die chips, cuds, clipped planchets, and other manufacturing abnormalities can also be collectible. But post-mint damage is something completely different. If your penny was damaged after leaving the mint, it generally does not qualify as a mint error. Scratches from circulation, cuts made with tools, dents, flattened edges, chemical discoloration, polishing, grinding, drilling, glue, heat damage, and environmental corrosion are examples of problems that can reduce collector interest rather than increase it. This distinction is especially important with modern zinc cents. Once the copper coating becomes damaged, moisture can reach the zinc underneath. The zinc may corrode, sometimes producing ugly bubbling, dark spots, or what collectors often describe as zinc rot. It can look dramatic, but dramatic damage is not automatically valuable. Now let's talk about condition, because this is where the ordinary 2015 D penny can become interesting. A heavily circulated example may have little or no premium over face value. In good condition, major details are still visible, but the coin shows substantial wear. For a common 2015 D cent, that usually means you are still talking about a coin worth around 1 cent rather than a major collectible. In fine condition, the coin has moderate circulation wear, but the major design elements remain clear. Again, the normal 2015 D cent generally remains close to face value. In very fine condition, more details survive on Lincoln and the Shield, but the coin is still clearly circulated. The market generally does not pay a major premium for ordinary examples at this level. Extremely fine examples show less wear. About uncirculated examples may have only slight friction on the highest points. These coins can be attractive to collectors, but because the 2015D issue is so plentiful, normal examples generally remain inexpensive. Mint state is where things start getting more interesting. A mint state coin has no evidence of circulation wear, although it can still have contact marks from production, transportation, or storage. Modern cents are graded from MS-60 upward, with higher grades requiring increasingly impressive preservation. A normal 2015D Lincoln penny in lower mint state grades may still be worth only a few cents to perhaps around $1 depending on the exact grade, color designation, certification, and market. High-quality examples around MS-65 can move into the low single digits. MS-66 examples can bring several dollars. At MS-67, values can reach the single digits or tens of dollars depending on color, certification, eye appeal, and demand. But here is the part that surprises many collectors. Once you approach the very highest grades, prices can rise dramatically because tiny differences matter. The finest certified examples are much more difficult to locate. PCGS records show a 2015D Lincoln cent reaching MS-67 plus red at a verified auction for about $381 in February 2023. Another certified MS-67 red example recorded a sale around $350. These are not prices for ordinary 2015D pennies. They represent exceptional certified coins at the very top of the known market. That distinction is critical. A 2015D penny is not automatically worth hundreds of dollars. A normal circulated coin is generally worth face value. Even many uncirculated examples are inexpensive. The hundreds of dollars are connected to extraordinary certified condition, not simply the date and mint mark. There are also different color designations that collectors watch closely. A brown coin has experienced substantial color change. Red-brown retains some original copper color but also shows oxidation or toning. Red means the coin has retained its original bright copper appearance to a high degree. For modern Lincoln cents, full red color can make a major difference in collector appeal, especially when combined with a very high grade. This is why you should never clean a potentially valuable 2015D penny. Cleaning may seem like a way to make the coin look brighter, but it can leave hairlines, unnatural surfaces, or other evidence that permanently damages collector value. Never polish it, scrub it, dip it in household chemicals, scrape it, or try to remove spots aggressively. If the coin looks unusually nice, the best thing you can do is protect it from further damage. Handling matters too. Hold the coin by its edges whenever possible. Finger oils can leave marks and contribute to surface problems over time. Store valuable examples in an inert holder designed for coins, away from moisture, extreme temperature changes, and harsh chemicals. First, photograph both sides clearly. Second, weigh it using an accurate scale. Third, measure it if necessary. Fourth, examine the date, mint mark, lettering, shield, rim, and edge under magnification. Fifth, compare the suspected error against reliable references and known examples. And finally, if the potential value is significant, consider professional authentication before spending money based on an online claim. This is especially important because online listings can be misleading. A seller can list a common penny for $500, $1,000, or even more. That does not prove anyone actually paid that amount. The difference between an asking price and a verified completed sale can be enormous. For a normal 2015D penny, the realistic market picture is much more modest. Circulated examples are generally face value. Typical about uncirculated examples may bring only a small premium, if any. Ordinary mint state pieces can range from cents into a few dollars depending on grade and color. High-grade certified examples can move into the tens of dollars, while exceptionally graded MS-67 and MS-67 Plus red coins have demonstrated the ability to reach hundreds of dollars. Genuine major mint errors can be worth more, sometimes substantially more, but there is no universal price for an error. The value depends on exactly what happened, how dramatic the error is, how much of the coin is affected, its condition, and how many comparable examples are known. A tiny die chip is not equivalent to a dramatic off-center strike, and machine doubling is not equivalent to a recognized doubled die. That is why the most important question is not simply, how much is my 2015 D penny worth? The better question is, what exactly is unusual about my 2015 D penny? If the coin is ordinary, you probably have a common modern cent. If it is unusually well preserved, you may have a condition rarity. If it has a legitimate variety, you may have something collectors actively search for. And if it has a dramatic, authenticated mint error, the story can become even more interesting. There is another fascinating reason collectors search for coins like this. Modern coins are being produced in enormous numbers, but most people never examine them closely. Millions of cents disappear into jars, drawers, cash registers, car cup holders, old collections, and forgotten rolls. A tiny number of unusual coins can survive unnoticed for years simply because nobody looked closely enough. The 2015 D Lincoln penny is therefore a perfect example of why coin collecting is not always about finding an ancient coin. Sometimes the most interesting discovery is a coin that is only a few years old but has an unusual combination of condition, variety, or mint error. So before you throw that 2015 D penny into a vending machine or drop it into a cash register, turn it over. Check the date. Find the D. Look at the color. Check the weight. Study the lettering. Examine Lincoln's ear, the date, Liberty, the shield, the rim, and the overall strike. Look for genuine characteristics created at the mint, not damage created after the coin entered circulation. And remember the most important lesson of all. The 2015 D Lincoln penny is common in its normal form, with approximately 4.674 billion struck, but the finest examples and legitimate varieties can tell a completely different story. A coin worth 1 cent in ordinary condition can become a collectible when preservation, rarity, and demand come together. So check your pocket change. Check those old coin jars. Look through your rolls of pennies. Search the forgotten collection sitting in a drawer. You may not find a fortune every time, but you might find something that makes you stop and look twice. The 2002 D Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint during a fascinating period in American history. The United States was entering the new millennium, the country was still dealing with the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, and the economy was beginning to recover from the early 2000s recession. At the same time, Americans were using enormous numbers of 1-cent coins in everyday commerce. The penny remained one of the most heavily produced denominations in the nation, and the Denver Mint played a major role in supplying those coins. In 2002, Denver produced 4,028,055,000 Lincoln cents with the D Mint mark. That is more than 4 billion examples from Denver alone, which immediately tells us something important. The 2002 D is not valuable simply because of its age. There are far too many survivors for that. What makes a particular 2002 D interesting is condition, variety, error status, and collector demand. The coin itself belongs to the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, which began in 1959 and continued through 2008. On the front is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, originally created by Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln is "I in God We Trust." Liberty appears to the left of his portrait, while the date 2002 appears on the right. And directly below the date, you should see the small D identifying the Denver Mint. Turn the coin over and you will see the Lincoln Memorial. The reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo and shows the memorial building surrounded by United States of America, 1 cent, e pluribus unum, and the architectural details of the monument itself. That reverse design is especially important when examining a 2002 D because some documented double die varieties affect the memorial columns. Now here is where your inspection gets interesting. A normal 2002D penny should weigh approximately 2.50 grams, measure about 19.05 millimeters across, have a thickness around 1.52 millimeters, and have a plain edge. The coin is not solid copper. By 2002, Lincoln cents were copper-plated zinc, with zinc making up the core and a thin copper coating on the outside. The standard composition is approximately 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. That composition creates another useful authentication clue. If your 2002D penny is dramatically different in weight, do not automatically assume you have discovered a fortune. First consider damage, corrosion, plating problems, or an altered coin. A genuine mint error involving an incorrect planchet can be valuable, but it needs to be authenticated because unusual weight by itself does not prove a mint error. Now look at the date. You want to see 2002 clearly. Then look immediately below the date for the D mint mark. Make sure the coin actually has the correct Lincoln Memorial reverse and that the design has not been manipulated. This sounds simple, but it matters because altered modern cents can sometimes be made to look like something they are not. And there is one particularly interesting reason the 2002D deserves a closer look. Specialist researchers have documented doubled die reverse varieties for this date and mint mark. One documented variety shows doubling involving the Lincoln Memorial columns, with extra impressions visible in the memorial area. Another documented 2002D doubled die reverse variety shows extra column detail around the 7th memorial column. These are legitimate varieties worth studying, but they should not be confused with ordinary machine doubling. This distinction is extremely important because the internet is filled with photographs of coins described as doubled dies when they are actually damaged or mechanically doubled. A genuine doubled die is created when the die itself receives a doubled design during the die manufacturing process. When that die strikes coins, the same doubled feature can appear repeatedly on coins produced from that die. Machine doubling is different. It occurs during the striking process and usually produces a flat, shelf-like appearance rather than a clearly separated secondary design. It is common and normally does not create a major premium. If you see a flattened edge on lettering or design elements, be cautious before calling it a doubled die. There is another fascinating lesson connected specifically to the 2002D. A reported coin once appeared to show extra memorial columns and was initially treated as a possible die variety. Later examination by specialists determined that the coin had actually been altered. The apparent extra columns were not created by the mint at all. This is a perfect example of why authentication matters. A strange-looking coin is not automatically a rare coin. For a typical circulated example, the answer is usually simple. It is generally worth around 1 cent. Even coins showing normal circulation where in good, fine, very fine, extremely fine, or about uncirculated condition normally do not command meaningful premiums simply because they are 2002D cents. Their huge production figure means ordinary circulated examples are plentiful. In good condition you will see substantial wear on Lincoln and the memorial. Fine condition shows more detail but still obvious circulation. Very fine examples retain stronger design detail. Extremely fine coins show only light wear on the highest points. About uncirculated examples may have only tiny traces of wear, and they can begin attracting the attention of collectors building high-quality Lincoln Memorial sets. But once you move into mint state, the story changes. A mint state 2002D has never circulated in the traditional sense, and its surfaces can be dramatically better than the average penny found in change. Collectors pay close attention to marks, scratches, spots, original luster, strike quality, and especially color designation. A copper-plated zinc cent can be classified as brown, or red depending on its remaining original color. An ordinary uncirculated 2002D may bring only a modest premium. Some raw or lightly circulated-looking uncirculated pieces may trade for well under $1. Higher-grade certified examples can bring several dollars or more, depending on grade and color. In the upper mint state grades, values can rise much further. For perspective, certified auction records show a 2002D graded MS68 red selling for $12.77 in a Great Collections auction. Another certified MS69 red example sold for $191.53 through Stack's Bowers, while other MS69 examples recorded sales around $173.90 and $203.28. The recognized auction record listed by PCGS for a 2002D Lincoln Cent is $376 for an MS69 example sold by Heritage Auctions in January 2015. That tells you something fascinating. The same basic date and mint mark can be worth 1 cent in circulation and hundreds of dollars at the very top of the certified grading scale. The difference is not the date alone. It is quality. And this is where gem mint state becomes important. A coin that looks beautiful to your eye may still have tiny marks visible under magnification. Modern cents were produced in huge quantities, but producing billions of coins does not mean billions survived in perfect condition. Contact marks can occur when coins strike each other, move through machinery, enter bags, or are transported before reaching the public. If you find a 2002D that is exceptionally bright, sharply struck, virtually mark-free, and still shows strong original red color, do not clean it. Cleaning can permanently reduce collector value. Never polish it, scrape it, rub it with chemicals, or attempt to make it shinier. A natural original surface is far more desirable than an artificially brightened coin. And there is another trap to avoid. Copper-plated zinc cents can develop spots, discoloration, corrosion, and exposed zinc where the plating has been damaged. These conditions may look dramatic, but dramatic does not mean valuable. Environmental damage, plating bubbles, scratches, dents, gouges, and chemical discoloration generally occur after the coin leaves the mint and should not be confused with genuine mint errors. A genuine error should show evidence consistent with the manufacturing process. For example, a major off-center strike, a significant die break, a substantial struck-through error, or an incorrect planchet can potentially be collectible. But the more unusual the claim, the more important professional authentication becomes. The same rule applies to supposed missing design details. If part of the lettering is weak, first consider a weak strike, grease-filled die, wear, or damage. If the copper layer appears missing, do not immediately call it a wrong metal error. Copper-plated zinc cents can lose plating because of environmental exposure or physical damage. The coin needs to be examined as a whole. If you believe your 2002D has a genuine double die reverse, photograph both sides under good lighting and use magnification. Look for consistent, rounded or clearly separated secondary design elements rather than flat shelf-like machine doubling. Pay particular attention to the Lincoln Memorial columns, especially the areas where documented 2002D double die reverse varieties have been reported. The best discoveries are not necessarily the coins that look the strangest. Sometimes the most valuable coin is the one that looks almost perfect. Imagine finding a 2002D in an old collection that has been sitting untouched for decades. You pull it out, place it under a light, and notice the original red color is still intense. The surfaces are remarkably clean. The memorial is sharply defined. You weigh it and get approximately 2.50 grams. The diameter checks out. The D is exactly where it should be. Then you examine the memorial columns and notice unusual doubling that appears to match a documented variety. That is when you stop treating the coin like pocket change. But remember, a variety does not automatically mean thousands of dollars. The documented 2002D double die reverse varieties are interesting specialist varieties, but they should not be presented as guaranteed jackpot coins. Their value depends on the strength of the doubling, attribution, condition, eye appeal, and what collectors are willing to pay at the time. This is also why you should be skeptical of internet claims that every 2002D penny with doubling is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Real auction records are far more useful than exaggerated asking prices. A seller can list a coin for any number they want. That does not mean someone actually paid it. For the ordinary collector, the smartest strategy is simple. First, identify the date. Then confirm the D mint mark. Check the overall design. Weigh the coin if something looks unusual. Inspect the edge. Examine the surfaces under magnification. Study the memorial columns. Look for genuine double design elements rather than damage. And if you think you have a major mint error or an exceptionally high-grade coin, consider submitting it to a respected professional grading service before making an expensive claim. Also remember that the 2002 D was part of the official 2002 United States Mint uncirculated coin set. Denver produced uncirculated examples for collectors, meaning some exceptionally preserved pieces can still exist outside ordinary circulation. That makes condition especially important when you are comparing a worn pocket coin with a pristine example from an old collection or original set. Most will be ordinary, and that is perfectly fine. Coin collecting is not about pretending every coin is rare. It is about learning how to recognize the exceptional one when it actually appears. The 2002 D Lincoln penny is a perfect example. With more than 4 billion struck at Denver, the date itself is common. A circulated example normally remains a 1-cent coin. But an unusually high-grade specimen, a documented double die reverse, or a properly authenticated major mint error can turn an ordinary-looking penny into something collectors genuinely want. So check your pocket change. Search those old coin jars. Look through inherited collections, rolls from the bank, forgotten envelopes, and boxes in the back of a drawer. And when you find a 2002 D, do not just glance at it and throw it back into circulation. Turn it over. Study the memorial. Inspect those columns. Check the surfaces. Check the weight. Look for the details that separate an ordinary cent from a truly interesting discovery. The United States was celebrating its 200th anniversary, and the entire country was caught up in the bicentennial celebration. Special commemorative designs appeared on the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar, but there is an important detail many people overlook. The Lincoln cent did not receive a special bicentennial reverse. The 1976 D Lincoln penny continued using the familiar Lincoln Memorial design that had been introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. That means a coin dated 1976 can look surprisingly ordinary even though it was produced during one of the most historically significant years in American history. The D tells you where this particular coin was made. The D mint mark means Denver, Colorado. During 1976, the Denver Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to keep up with America's demand for circulating money. The 1976 D Lincoln cent had a reported mintage of 4,221,592,455 pieces. That is more than 4 billion coins. And that number immediately tells us something important. A normal circulated 1976 D penny is not rare simply because it is from 1976. There are enormous numbers of them, and many remain today. The 1976 D Lincoln cent was made from the traditional bronze composition used for circulating cents at the time, approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures about 19 millimeters across. It has a plain edge rather than a reeded edge. On the front is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above him, "Liberty" beside him, and the date 1976 below. Just beneath the date you should find the small D mint mark identifying Denver. Turn the coin over and you see the Lincoln Memorial. Above the building is United States of America, below it is 1 cent, and around the design are the inscriptions E pluribus unum. Near the bottom you will also see the designer's initials, FG, representing Frank Gasparo, who designed the reverse of the Lincoln Memorial cent. If you find a 1976 D Lincoln penny, the first thing you should do is confirm that the date really is 1976 and that the mint mark is AD. The D should be part of the original design, not something added later. Look carefully at the shape, edges, and surrounding metal. A genuine mint variety should have characteristics created during the manufacturing process. A damaged mint mark can look dramatic under magnification, but damage does not automatically create collector value. This is especially important with 1970-60 cents because documented varieties exist, including repunched mint mark varieties and doubled die varieties. Some references also catalog other unusual die characteristics. But collectors should be careful because the internet is full of photographs of ordinary machine doubling, die deterioration, scratches, dents, and other forms of damage being advertised as rare doubled dies. A true doubled die is created during the die manufacturing process, before the die is used to strike coins. The doubling becomes part of the design itself. Depending on the variety, you may see separation, notching, or clearly duplicated design elements. Machine doubling is different. It happens during the striking process and often produces a flat, shelf-like appearance rather than the rounded, separated design associated with genuine hub doubling. If you see something strange around the D mint mark, do not immediately assume you have discovered a fortune. A damaged mint mark can result from someone scraping the coin, hitting it, squeezing it, or exposing it to machinery. A genuine repunched mint mark has a very different appearance, and should match known diagnostic characteristics for the specific variety. There are documented 1970-60 repunched mint mark varieties, and collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents know that these varieties can be worth pursuing. But the premium depends heavily on the exact attribution, condition, and buyer demand. A coin simply described as having a weird-looking D is not automatically valuable. Imagine two 1970-60 Lincoln pennies sitting next to each other. One has spent decades moving through cash registers, pockets, parking meters, vending machines, and bank bags. The other was removed from a roll shortly after it was minted and carefully protected for 50 years. They have the same date, same mint mark, same basic design, and same composition, but the second coin can be worth dramatically more because collectors pay premiums for exceptional preservation. A heavily circulated example may be worth only its face value. If the coin is worn but still identifiable, it can fall into the lower circulated grades. In good condition, much of the original detail has been worn down. In fine condition, more design detail remains, but the high points of Lincoln's portrait show noticeable wear. Very fine examples retain substantially more detail, while extremely fine coins show only moderate wear on the highest surfaces. About uncirculated examples are even more interesting because they show only slight evidence of circulation and may retain much of their original mint luster. Once you reach mint state, the coin has no evidence of circulation wear, although it can still have contact marks from other coins, abrasions, spots, or discoloration. Lincoln cents are commonly described by collectors as brown, red-brown, or red. A brown coin has experienced enough oxidation and environmental exposure that much of the original bright copper color has changed. A red-brown coin retains some original red color but has begun to tone. A red coin retains a much greater percentage of its original mint red appearance. For a modern copper cent like the 1970-60, a high grade combined with strong original red color can be particularly desirable. A typical circulated 1970-60 penny is generally not a high dollar coin. Many circulated examples are worth around 1 cent, and even nice circulated pieces may bring only a small premium depending on demand. In lower uncirculated grades, values can still remain modest, often in the range of a few cents to a couple of dollars. Around the mint state 63 level, a normal example may still be worth only a small amount. At higher grades, however, prices can climb. A well-preserved mint state 64 or mint state 65 red example may command several dollars or potentially more depending on the marketplace, certification, eye appeal, and current collector demand. At mint state 66 red, the coin becomes considerably more interesting, with premium examples potentially reaching tens of dollars. Once you move into the very finest grades, the numbers can rise dramatically because tiny marks that would be irrelevant on an ordinary penny can determine whether a coin qualifies for an elite grade. The documented auction history proves just how much condition can matter. A 1970-60 Lincoln Cent graded mint state 67 red has a recorded auction sale of $999 at Heritage Auctions in 2016. That is an extraordinary result compared with the 1 cent face value of the coin, but it does not mean every 1970-60 penny is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. It means that an exceptionally preserved coin at an elite grade can attract serious competition. There is also a documented $1,265 auction record for a 1970-60 Lincoln Cent, recorded as an Annex Mint State 60 example sold by Stax in 2007. That unusual result demonstrates why auction records should always be interpreted carefully rather than copied into a simple price claim. Certification, color, eye appeal, market conditions, and the circumstances of a particular auction can all influence the final price. So if someone tells you that every 1970-60 penny is worth thousands of dollars, that is simply not supported by the market. The real opportunity is finding the exceptional coin. And this is where your flashlight, magnifying glass, and digital scale become useful. Start with the date. Make sure the 4 digits are genuine and have the correct shape. Next, examine the D mint mark. Look around it for evidence of a recognized repunched mint mark variety, but compare what you see against established variety references instead of relying on a social media photograph. Then inspect the obverse lettering, especially Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date, looking for genuine double design characteristics rather than flat mechanical doubling. Next, examine the reverse. Look at the Lincoln Memorial, the lettering, and the designer initials. Search for unusual raised metal, missing details, die chips, cracks, or other features that appear to have been created during striking. But remember one of the most important rules in coin collecting. Damage is not an error. If the coin has scratches, gouges, dents, flattening, discoloration caused by chemicals, evidence of grinding, or damage from machines after it left the mint, those features generally do not make the coin rare. In fact, cleaning a coin can reduce its desirability. A shiny penny is not necessarily a valuable penny. Never polish a potentially valuable 1970-60 Lincoln Cent. Never scrub it with household chemicals. Never use abrasive materials to make it look brighter. And never scratch the surface to see whether something unusual is underneath. If you believe you have found a genuine variety or dramatic mint error, leave the coin exactly as it is and have it examined by a reputable numismatist or professional grading service. You can also weigh it. A normal 1970-60 Lincoln Cent should be around 3.11 grams. Small differences can occur because of wear, environmental exposure, or scale accuracy, so a reading slightly above or below the expected weight does not automatically prove an error. But a major unexplained difference deserves further investigation. The composition is another clue. The 1970-60 cent is a copper alloy coin, not a modern copper-plated zinc cent. That means a genuine example should have the characteristics expected from its bronze composition. If someone shows you a strange-colored 1970-60 penny and claims it is made from a rare metal, do not accept the claim without professional testing. Color alone is not proof. The 1970-60 Lincoln penny is valuable as a reminder that rarity is not always about how many coins were originally made. More than 4 billion were struck, yet the number of truly exceptional coins surviving in outstanding condition is much smaller. Collectors are not simply buying the year. They are competing for quality. It is also why you should not judge your penny only by looking at a price guide. A price guide might show an estimate, while an actual auction tells you what a particular buyer was willing to pay for a particular coin at a particular moment. For a normal circulated 1970-60 penny, think face value rather than fantasy prices. For attractive uncirculated pieces, modest premiums are possible. For high-grade red examples, the value can move into the tens or even hundreds of dollars. For an elite mint state example with exceptional eye appeal, documented auction results show that prices can approach or exceed 4 figures. And for a genuinely rare, properly attributed mint error or variety, the value must be evaluated individually because the exact variety, grade, certification, and market demand can completely change the result. That is the key message. The date 1976 does not make the coin rare. The D-Mint mark does not make it rare. The fact that America was celebrating its bicentennial does not automatically make the penny valuable. What you are looking for is the combination of correct identification, exceptional condition, original color, and a legitimate variety or error. Before you sell one, photograph both sides under good lighting. Weigh it carefully. Record its condition without cleaning it. Compare the features with established references. If the coin appears unusually sharp, has strong original red color, shows possible double details, or has an unusual mint mark, consider professional authentication before accepting an offer. And if you are checking an old collection, do not separate the coin from its original holder unnecessarily. Sometimes the history of how a coin was stored can help explain its condition and originality. There is something almost poetic about the 1976 Lincoln penny. It was born during America's bicentennial, produced in Denver in enormous numbers, passed through the hands of ordinary Americans, and in many cases disappeared into jars and drawers for decades. Most are still just pennies. But a tiny fraction survived with extraordinary preservation or unusual characteristics, and those are the coins collectors want. So the next time you find a 1976 Lincoln penny, stop for a second. Look at the date. Look at the D. Study Lincoln's portrait. Examine Liberty. Check the lettering. Turn it over and inspect the memorial. Look for genuine double details, recognized repunched mint marks, unusual strike characteristics, and signs that something happened at the mint rather than after the coin entered circulation. Check the weight. Protect the surface. And above all, do not clean it. That 1976 Lincoln penny may not be $1 million coin, and claims that ordinary examples are worth $1 million should be treated with extreme skepticism. But the real excitement of coin collecting is that you never know what condition the next coin will be in until you look. A 4 billion coin mintage does not mean every surviving example is equal. So check your pocket change, search those old coin jars, go through your inherited collections, and take another look at every 1976 Lincoln penny you find. You might discover nothing more than 1 cent, or you might discover an unusually preserved piece of America's bicentennial history that deserves a much closer examination. If you enjoyed this coin hunt and want more stories about ordinary coins that could have extraordinary characteristics, make sure you like this video, leave a comment telling me whether you have ever found a 1976 penny, and subscribe for more rare coin discoveries, valuable varieties, and hidden treasures you might already have sitting in your own collection.